let's talk about how important your assessments are. What is the most important assessment that your kids are going to take this year? Well, obviously, that is the final assessment. And in most cases, that's the STAR test. Now, for a lot of our kids, the most important assessment they're going to take is going to be their end of course test. For a lot of our kids, their most important assessment is going to be what their reading level is or how they did in advantage math. But there's something at the end of the year that's going to measure how we did with our kids. Now, let's talk about STAR for just a minute, because the truth is, many people don't accept that we should have a final assessment. And I'm not going to take time to get into that debate right now. I will say this, it's prevalent all across the country. The schools that do Common Core, they have an end of year Common Core assessment. And in many cases, teachers are really, really against that. And oftentimes the public is against that. Well, here's what I often ask teachers about this, though, if they're against that. The truth is this, ask your new teachers, hey, did you have to pass an assessment to be certified to become a teacher in the state of Texas? Yeah, you probably did. Did you have to pass an assessment to become a principal or an assistant principal? Yeah, you probably did. Well, don't be a hypocrite, because the truth is, all of us who are successful, we passed all of our tests. And it's a little bit hypocritical if we don't prepare our kids to pass the tests that are coming their way. Because look at the tests that are coming their way. Eventually, they're going to take ACT or SAT, and this is going to determine what colleges can they get into, what kind of opportunities are they going to have to pursue their living wage career, their dream. If someone wants to be a cosmetologist, you have to pass a test. You want to be a police officer, you have to pass a test. Think of all the tests that firefighters have to take, both physically and mentally. If you want to work with air conditioning, you have to constantly upgrade your skills and you have to take a test. Lawyers have to pass the bar. And I've never heard us say, you know what? I think we're just testing those doctors way too much. You know what? We should trust those doctors to just know what they're doing. I don't believe so. You know, I'm one of these people that I think we're not testing those doctors enough. When I went in for gallbladder surgery one time and I saw the man's diploma on the wall, I was actually looking for the word gallbladder. I wanted to know that this man had passed his test about gallbladders, and I didn't want him to pass it at a level of 70%. So I'm just saying that tests are a part of life, and we want to get our kids prepared for it. Because when it comes down to it, our final assessment is about the core thing that we do in education, which is teaching, reading, writing, math, science, social studies. Now, obviously, there are other skills that are just as important as we get our kids ready to go out into the world and to be successful beyond high school. Sometimes those other skills are a little harder to measure, but we can definitely measure whether we have taught these basic skills here. And here's a fact. When we give the STAR test, such as the third grade reading test, when a third grader doesn't pass the test, inevitably it's because the third grader can't read. It's not really that complicated when you come down to it. We haven't done our job with that student. I want you to think about this. What if you went into a class as an adult and you want to take a GED and they offer a GED class? And what if your professor told you, hey, you know what? I'm philosophically against teaching or against testing. So I'm not really going to prepare you for this test. I'm going to give you some general ideas and you're kind of on your own. Well, you would want another professor because your job is to pass the GED, which is going to open many doors. It's going to open doors to financial aid. It's going to help you get more money on your job and maybe advance in your career. So you see where I'm coming from on this. So here's how I want you to view a final assessment. And this is admittedly a weird analogy, but just go with it. Here's the final assessment that I'm going to take this year. In May of 2017, this year, I am going to play golf with those three people that you see right there. So 4 of us are going to play golf in May of this year. And we're playing for a lot of money. So there's 3 of my friends, and we're going to play golf, and we are playing for a lot of money. And I want to win the money. And your job is to help me win the money. And that's all this is about. I want to beat these people, and I want to win the money. Now, the caveat to this is, I have never, ever played golf before. And in fact, I've never even seen it played. I've never even seen it played on television. I've never even been to a golf course. So just imagine that you found me under a rock and you're going to help me win the money in May of this year. So let's examine it from this, because the entire objective is for me to win the money. Nothing else matters. That is what is going to happen in May. So, therefore, to get me to my final assessment, along the way, you're going to have to assess me to see how I'm doing toward my goal of winning the money. Now, how often you do that, that's up to you. I don't care. So let's talk about assessments in light of this. Assessments. Standards are meaningless unless you define how you will assess them. If you lay a standard out there, that is fine, but it doesn't mean anything until we have identified how it will be assessed. Assessments are not the end of teaching and learning process. They're the starting point. Assessments are the starting point. They're not the end. We're actually going to start with assessments and work backwards. And since the most important assessment of all is the final assessment, any interim assessment that you give me should replicate the final assessment in format, design, etc. In other words, each interim assessment that I take should be a practice for the final test. Now remember, I want the money. Your goal is to help me get the money. So let's look at a standard. Here's standard number 1. Be able to put the ball into the hole. So you can see I'm in a room. It's a flat room with a flat carpet, and I'm practicing. And you decide to give me what is called an interim assessment or a formative assessment. And your assessment says you want me to be able to make 8 out of 10 putts from 3 feet or less. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I've got to learn how to putt. But if you use this as one of your interim assessments, there's a problem with this. See, I think this is better used for a unit test or a do now or a daily test or a check for understanding. Because what's wrong if this is a true interim assessment? What is wrong with this scenario, making 8 out of 10 putts from 3 feet or less? Well, let me show you what's wrong with it. Because when I take the final exam on a real golf course to win the money, the greens on a golf course are not flat. Look at this. They curve. And that's learning how to putt in a room is going to be fine for me learning how to putt, but it's not going to really translate to me being able to win the money. I want to win the money. Let's look at another example. Standard number 2. The standard says, hit the ball with the club as straight and as far as you can. Sounds good. So you take me out to a driving range and I practice, and you decide to give me an interim assessment. Here's your interim assessment. You want me to hit 10 shots at least 250 yards down the middle. Sounds good. However, I'm going to tell you right now, this is more a unit assessment. This is more of a do now. This is more of a weekly kind of assessment. It's not a good interim assessment. You want to know why? Because the truth is, you didn't tell me this. When I go out on the real golf course, I'm not always going to hit it 250 yards. There's water there sometimes. And maybe I need to hit it short of the water, or maybe I need to learn how to hit it over the water. Do you see what I'm saying? It really doesn't prepare me for that. So let's go back to assessments. Given what I've just shown you, assessments. Our assessments must be outstanding. Our analysis of the results of these assessments will drive everything that we do. We've got to have great assessments. Assessments are the starting point. They guide our instruction. We start from the end. We look at the assessment. I want to win the money. Everything you're going to do with me is going to be designed to help me win the money. It is perfectly okay to have a do now, to have a unit test, to check for understanding on a daily basis. There's nothing wrong with that. That's part of teaching. But when we are talking about a true formative or interim assessment, we're talking about something really important. Assessments must match the final assessment in rigor and in look. And assessments must be created with the star released questions in hand. We must assess me on a golf course. The best assessment for me is to take me out after about 4 weeks, put me on the first tee and say, let's see how you can do, because that feels like the real thing. Assessments must be common across grade level or department. That way we can measure how we're doing. Assessments must be cumulative and spiraling. They are not unit tests. Assessments must match the demands of the final test. If it's a math test, then 80% of the problems should be in a problem-solving format, as that is what the final test requires. We don't need 10 fraction problems. That's not what STAR is going to look like. If STAR is going to ask about fractions, they're going to put it in the form of a problem-solving problem. Assessments must match the final assessment in rigor and look. And the curriculum support person should be present when assessments are created. Here's some more. Assessments should be transparent. The teacher should have the assessment in hand when teaching and planning. It's not a secret. We trust the teacher. We hand the assessment to them at the very beginning and say, this is what you're going to be tested on right here. You take me out to the golf course, you show me around and say, hey, this is where you're going to play those 3 people for the money. It's not a surprise. Therefore, we ask the teachers, just don't teach that particular question, but definitely teach to that rigor. And if that question twists things in a certain way, you twist it in a certain way, and it's going to help you when you do your lesson plans. It's going to help you when you teach. Assessments should be scanned to enable effective analysis. So let's just look at this. Here's a 5th grade standard, a 5th grade science standard, 5.5a. Classify matter based on physical properties, including matter. Hard to understand. But here's the beautiful thing about Texas now. We don't have to sit and just analyze the standard, because there are now 4 released tests out there with all these questions. Do you want to know what 5.5a looks like? It looks like that. That came off of a released test. Or if you don't believe me, here's another one. That came off of a released test. You want to see another one? That came off of a released test. Want to see another one? There it is. Want to see another one? That came off of a released test. In fact, there were scores of these. So here's what you do. When you are planning an assessment, take the release test and get every question that's possible that you have on these former release tests and put them out right in front of you like this. And I promise you on 5.5a, there's even more than this. And this is the standard. You see right here, we're looking at the golf course. We're looking at the water, the trees. We're looking at the sand traps. We're looking at everything you have to do on the golf course. This is how it's going to be tested. We don't have any reason for our kids to fail because we know what to prepare them. Now, obviously, they're going to write a new question, but it's going to be something just like these right here. All right, so what it helps us do is this. When we're writing questions for our assessments, we need to make sure, do they look like the real thing? Do they match the rigor? So I wrote this question. The standard is we're going to round to the nearest 10 and the nearest 100. So I wrote a simple question. What's 33 rounded to the nearest 10? But then what I did was I pulled out an actual STAR question. And look at how they ask it. Which sentence is true? If you round 38 to the nearest 10, you get 30. Hey, they took this to a whole nother level than my question up there. So it teaches me how to write my questions or how to choose my questions. All right. So what do we do then? We need the release test questions in front of us, and we need them in a form that is very easy to use. And you know what? Thankfully, our wonderful curriculum people have already done the work for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out and I'm going to go to Eduphoria and I'm going to go into forethought. And when I go to forethought and I go to scope and sequence, and I'm kind of a little new to this because I've been out of the game for a while. Let me go to elementary science. I'm going to go to 5th grade science because we have 4 good release tests out on 5th grade science. So when I go to science, I'll go to grade 5. Wait a moment while this comes up. And you're going to find the release test on here. Let me go to Unit 2, and where it says resources right here, let me open this up and look down here, related resources. Here's all the STAR release questions, and they're working now to even get the 2016 on here. And look at what's over here at the bottom. I can open this up for 5.9a and watch what happens. When I open it, they have done all of the work of putting the release test questions out there. Look at that. Those are gorgeous. That tells me when I'm teaching 5.9a, I know what to do. I can get my kids there. I can make good assessments, but not only can I make good assessments, I can make sure on a daily basis I am teaching to this rigor right here. Thank you, curriculum people, for making this so easy because you can print that off. I suggest that when you are making these assessments, you print that off so you can measure, did your questions meet the rigor of that right there? All right, so let's go back to my presentation. So here's what I'm saying. What you do is everything you've bought, star one, motivation math, step up to star, anything that you've bought. Don't let it run you. You run it. You know what I suggest you do is take one of those, run it off, cut out every question that you have. Take your scissors, cut out every one of them. And what you're going to do is this. You're going to see, are these good questions? For instance, if you cut out this question right here and you're wanting to see, is this a really good question? Is this going to measure the rigor of star? Then match it and see, does it look like it should measure the rigor of star? If it does, then take that question and put it in your basket of your 3.4B questions. That's a good question. If you open up that book and it's not a good question and you've cut that one out, throw it in the trash. This way, then you're going to get a whole basket of 3.4B questions, and it's going to help you as you make your assessments, and you're going to make sure that you are making good assessments as we go along. So back to assessments for just a moment. Assessments are so important. They are the guiding thing for our teaching. They're going to guide and tell us whether or not we have actually done what we said we were going to do. If you need help from me, be sure and email me. All of these resources are out there because of all the great work that has been done ahead of us. You have a great day.